So I want to talk a little bit about communicating with our dogs. It's important to understand that, first, dogs can only think like dogs. And I know that sounds like a duh kind of statement. But I think that we can understand that. But when it comes to actually practicing and living by that idea, we don't really do it. We do dog training. We tell dogs to sit, to down, to heel, to place. We try to reward them for good behaviors, good boy, good girl, treats, toys, that kind of thing. Praise. And so, if we think dogs can only think like dogs, we have to think about how do they communicate then? How do they speak? And I always like to tell my clients that dogs are animals first. So they're an animal first, then they're a dog, then they're their personality, their breed, and then a pet. And if we look at the human being, I think that we're an animal, and then we're a human being, we're our personality, and then we look at, well, what kind of human being are we, right? So, if we look at, well, a dog can only think like a dog, and a human can think like a human, but we have this ability to understand things at a more complex level. I don't know if that's really the right way to phrase that, but we understand things at a different level, in a different way. And so if we look at this sequence of animal first, what kind of animal? Dog. Then we look at human beings, animal first, what kind of animal? Human. Well, if dogs can only think like dogs, we have to see that, well, they're an animal first, and then they're a dog. We're an animal first, and then a human. So we can understand the dog, and we can look at to understand the dog's perspective. But when it comes to communication, we need to actually communicate with our dogs from the animal level. That's where we actually share a commonality, is the animal. And the human being has a hard time speaking from the animal perspective, because we're trying to not be animals. Some people say we're not. And so we're really trying to not be a part of nature. Nature's like out there, We are trying to separate ourselves, at least some people, from nature. And I think this is where a lot of problems happen. And this isn't just with our dogs, but in terms of our dogs, we have a lot of problems because we are not understanding them from nature's perspective. We're looking at them from a pet perspective, which is an idea that's come from our mind. And so we need to start to look at dogs from nature's perspective, and then we understand each individual dog from this perspective, and then we can kind of see what kind of pet we can have when it comes to this concept of a pet. But we need to be speaking to the animal side first. And then with this understanding and this ability to speak from the animal's perspective, we can then start to get more of what we're looking for from the pet side. But if we're looking at them from the domesticated pet side, I think we're going to run into a lot of problems, and then ultimately there's a lot more suffering, and the dog ends up paying the price for our misunderstanding. They're the ones that get isolated. They're the ones that end up being killed. So let's look at our dogs from the perspective of nature. If we love something, we want to understand. We want to understand them, know them for who they are, what they are. And I think that we're often not really understanding our dogs for what they really are. And it's unfortunate. And I always say that I hope for a day that we no longer use our dogs as a distraction from reality, but a connection to it. So I'm interested. What are your thoughts? Leave it down below.